Steeler fans are doing anything they can to justify why Russell Wilson is still a good quarterback in the NFL. And that goes as far as blaming one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of the league and Sean Payton for why Russell Wilson failed in Denver. And what's funny to me is how when Russ first got traded from Seattle to the Denver Broncos, you know what the narrative was from the national media? Russell Wilson is the missing piece to the Broncos being a Super Bowl team. All they needed was a good quarterback, and they finally got that in Russ. Remember, his first offseason in Denver, the hype was surreal. People were saying how the Denver Broncos were a Super Bowl contender. And all of a sudden, the narrative a few years later is he didn't have a good play caller. He had a bad team around him. When you get paid elite quarterback money, you are expected to elevate that team. Especially when you have a roster that at that point, most people believe was good enough to be a Super Bowl quality team. But yet, Nathaniel Hackett proved to be an incompetent head coach. He didn't even last the season. And Russell Wilson had the worst year of his NFL career. And then here comes Sean Payton, the guy who Steeler fans are trying to blame for why Russell Wilson didn't work out in Denver last season and why they ended up taking the NFL's largest dead cap in history to get rid of him, saying how Russell Wilson wasn't set up to succeed because Sean Payton's play calling was abysmal. And they also want to use this narrative that Drew Brees made Sean Payton. Are you sure about that? Because last time I checked, the following season after Drew Brees retired, Sean Payton had a winning record with 3 different quarterbacks. He started that final season in New Orleans 5-1 with Jameis Winston. He's the only head coach who was able to have Jameis Winston playing high-level, efficient, mistake-free football. He had a 14-2 touchdown interception ratio and had the Saints on top of the NFC South before he suffered a season-ending injury against the Buccaneers. Despite that, he was still able to win games and keep the Saints in the playoff hunt that year with Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian at quarterback. I also remember back in 2019 when Drew Brees got injured, Teddy Bridgewater had a 5-0 record at quarterback and got paid a big bag by Carolina following that season due to Sean Payton's tutelage. But we're really trying to blame Sean Payton for the reason for Russell Wilson's fall off in Denver? How about why Seattle traded him in the first place? The year after they trade Russell Wilson, Geno Smith had one of the biggest insanity runs that we've ever seen in the history of this league. Steeler fans are trying to do everything imaginable, throwing shit at the wall to convince themselves that they're going to get the old Russell Wilson that we saw and grew up with in Seattle. You can call me a hater all you want to, but I rather be a realistic fan than be an overly optimistic fan. The reason why Russ failed in Denver was simple. He wasn't good anymore. When you pay the kind of money that Denver gave Russell Wilson, you're expected to overcome some limitations. That team was good enough to win. And if he was good, as what Steeler fans believe he is, Denver wouldn't have took the league's largest dead cap hit to get rid of him, and he damn sure wouldn't be playing on the veteran minimum. I hear nothing but the blame game instead of people putting the accountability on Russell Wilson. Everybody wants to vilify Sean Payton because he kicked Russell Wilson to the curb. Was it morally right what he did to Russ, benching him so they didn't have to pay the extra guarantees that were due to him in case he got injured? Yes, it was wrong, but this is a business. And what do they always say about business? Never get your feelings involved. So no matter if you like it or not, what the Broncos did was business savvy. And it was cutthroat. That's just how the NFL is. And people feel a certain way about Sean Payton because of that. And since Russell Wilson is such a well-liked guy in the eyes of many fans and people in the media, despite many teammates not really having a lot of good things to say who have played around Russell Wilson, even Marshawn Lynch on the podcast that he did said that Russell Wilson was a little bit off. When Sean Payton arrived in Denver, he walked into Russell Wilson having his own office and his own locker room, or his own locker, separate from the team. You know what Sean Payton told him to do? Pack your shit out of this office, pack your stuff from your locker, and go join the team, pal. Who are you to think that you're special enough to have your own dedicated office and your own locker away from the team? Sean Payton held this dude accountable. He held this dude to a certain standard because he expected a certain level of quarterback play for a guy who was receiving high-end quarterback money. You can say the play calling wasn't good all you want to, but Sean Payton wasn't able to run the system that he had so much success with Jameis Winston, Trevor Siemian, and Taysom Hill his final year in New Orleans, and all the years when he was winning with Drew Brees. Because when you have a guy like Russell Wilson, you have to tailor your offense around him. And what is Russell Wilson's game? Getting outside the pocket, making big throws downfield, and playing well outside the structure. But when does Russell Wilson struggle? When he has to play within the pocket, within the structure of the offense. A lot of the sacks that people tried to put on Denver's offensive line not being good, a large of them were due to Russell Wilson holding the ball too damn long because he was bailing out of clean pockets, trying to make defenders miss when he doesn't have the same athleticism now that he used to have in his glory days of Seattle. Steeler fans still think that Russell Wilson has some juice left in the tank and that he was held back by a bad situation in Denver, although he was seen to be the Messiah and he was supposed to be able to get that team to the Super Bowl, a place they haven't been since Peyton Manning retired in 2015, and instead he's severely disappointed because he just wasn't good anymore. It's okay to admit that Russell Wilson has regressed. No player in the NFL plays at the same level that they did when they first entered the league all the way until they retire. You want to know why? Because the older you get, the more your athleticism starts to diminish and the less skilled you become. That's part of aging. Father time catches up to you. And with the play style that Russell Wilson has, he has regressed to the point where he can't have winning quarterback play based on the skill set that he has. When you aren't as good as an athlete, you don't have enough athleticism to outrun or make defensive linemen miss like how you used to with the Seahawks, you end up being forced to have to win from within the pocket. And that's when Russell Wilson was at his worst because he can't throw in the middle of the field. He was 22nd in the National Football League in 2023 in middle of the field pass attempts. He's scared to throw in the middle of the field, and plus he's not that accurate because he's short. You can say Drew Brees was short, but he had an inch or two over Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson and Drew Brees had two different skill sets. Drew Brees was seen as a point guard. He got the ball out fast. He did what Sean Payton asked of him. And he ran Sean Payton's offense to its highest level of efficiency. That's not Russell Wilson. He's not a point guard. He's somebody who has to get outside the pocket, improvise, and make big throws downfield. And he doesn't have the same arm strength nor the athleticism to sustain that style of play anymore, being 35 years old of age. Russell Wilson has regressed, and the Steelers are going to be in for their first losing season under Mike Tomlin if Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback for this team for the whole entire 2024 season. If your argument is, well, he had better stats than Lamar and Matthew Stafford and Jalen Hurts, you're a box sheet watcher. You can't judge how good a player is based on their stats, because if that's the case, you mean to tell me that Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, and Lamar only because he had better stats? Get the hell out of here. Because if he was as good as what those stats indicated, Denver wouldn't have took a record history, dead cap hit to get rid of him, and he wouldn't be playing on the veteran minimum. I'm not hating. I'm telling you what the rest of the league feels about Russell Wilson. If you want a clear indicator of your worth, ask your employer what your worth is compared to how much you're getting paid to the rest of the people that you work with. If you're one of the best workers in your company, you're going to be compensated like one. The NFL told you what Russell Wilson is. Because if they still felt he was good, nearly every team would have been chalking at the bit to sign Russell Wilson. He only had really two offers. The Pittsburgh Steelers playing for the veteran minimum or getting slightly a little bit more with the New York Giants. But if he was as good as what Steeler fans still think he is, he would have had way more options. The NFL has told you what Russell Wilson's value is. He's a bottom 6, bottom 5 quarterback in the league as a starter. You can say he's better than whoever the Steelers had at QB last year, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and Mason Rudolph, but that still doesn't show much because the Steelers still have the worst quarterback room in the AFC North. And even if Russell Wilson plays at a serviceable level, the Steelers are still going to have the same exact thing happen to them if they make it to the playoffs that's been transpiring the last couple of times they've appeared in the postseason. And that's been early round playoff exits because Russell Wilson isn't going to be good enough to outduel a Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Justin Herbert or any of the top quarterbacks in the league in the opening round. Why Pittsburgh lost to the Buffalo Bills last year was because of Josh Allen. There was a clear quarterback mismatch. You need good quarterback play if you want to win in the postseason. Look at what happened with the Cleveland Browns last year. As much as we love the Joe Flacco insanity comeback story, when they played against the Houston Texans in the wild card round, it was clearly obvious who the better quarterback was, and that was the young prodigy and C.J. Stroud. Why Mike Tomlin can't win in the postseason is because he doesn't have a good quarterback. The Steelers still are in the same position at quarterback that they've been ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired. The offense that Russell Wilson is going to be running gives me a lot of similarities to the offense the Steelers ran Big Ben's final season in Pittsburgh. Steeler fans are trying to point the finger at everybody else for why Russell Wilson failed in Denver, instead of pointing the finger at the guy who was expected to be the savior of that franchise, who was supposed to elevate that franchise to a Super Bowl level. He was paid high-end quarterback money and instead gave them low-end quarterback play. Sean Payton came in and helped this guy somewhat resurrect himself and still wasn't good enough. They decided we rather replace you with Bo Nix and Zach Wilson rather than continue to overpay you and keep you around, and that shows volumes. But instead of accepting that Russell Wilson isn't good anymore, Steeler fans want to call you a hater because you don't want to buy in to the narrative that Russell Wilson still has juice left in the tank. They want to sell you on the fact that he's better than what we've had the last couple of years, which doesn't show much because where has that guy in Pittsburgh? Sent home to Cancun as soon as they get to the postseason.